Hello and welcome to another episode of She's the Boss Female Entrepreneur Story, where I'm joined by phenomenal women in business in all different sectors and all different industries with the aim of inspiring you, motivating you, empowering you on your entrepreneurial journey. If you haven't already done so, make sure that you click that subscribe button so that you're the first to know when I release a new video. And also make sure that you click like, comment, share amongst your networks if anything in this video, in this interview, really resonates with you. Today, I'm really excited because I'm joined by Denise or Davina Maxwell, depending on where you know her from, who is the founder of Lensi Photography. So before we get stuck in, why do you have two names, Denise and Davina? Which one?
Okay, so for anyone that's familiar with Jamaican or Caribbean or even Irish families, people will know that you have a home name and you have an outside name. So your home name is almost like your pet name. So I have two pet names. So one is Davina, and then the other one I prefer not to say. My family members will know it. And then my outside name, which people call your government name, is Denise. So people either know me as Denise or Davina. And with my surname, I got married last year and we haven't yet changed our names. So my surname is pending at the moment as well.
Okay. Congratulations on getting married.
Thank you.
So let's jump right on in. Lensi Photography, tell us about your business, the inspiration for starting, and how long you've been in business.
Okay, so I've been in business for nearly 10 years now. It sounds a real long time when I say that, because when I first started, it just seemed so daunting and so impossible. So now when I look back and I think I haven't picked up a salary for nearly 10 years, it just seems really, really surprising to me. So a photography business, obviously. I shoot lots of different genres. So that can include everything from portraits, weddings, events. I'm also one of the London Fashion Week photographers. I shoot some of the Sports Diamond League. I shoot the London Marathon. I've had clients such as BBC. I've shot at MTV, I've shot all over the world, so very, very varied portfolio. Lots of celebrity stuff, lots of music stuff. I kind of like the variety. I think it kind of tests me a bit. Mm-hmm. So a very varied photography portfolio.
And what led you down that path? Is photography something you've always been interested in? Did you always have a plan to start a photography business, or did you kind of just stumble in it?
No, I didn't have a plan to start a photography business. I started out as, with every group of friends, there's always the irritating friend who's always taking pictures. Yeah. Everybody can think of their own friendship network and think, oh yeah, that's that person, or that person, or that was me. And that was me within my friendship group. So I was taking pictures, and it was before the time when everyone had mobile phones. So I'd bring my 35mm camera out, my roll of film, and we'd bring that to carnivals and, to fun fairs and all kinds of places. And I literally just loved taking photos. And I loved being the person to capture those memories. And I was always the person within our friendship group that had pictures of all of those things. So I always had that passion. And even when I go back and look as far back as leaving junior school and leaving infant school, I'd borrow my mum's camera to bring in to get pictures of everyone. So for some reason, I always thought about photos. So fast forward to my working life, I did the normal kind of A-levels, degree, and then into a career. So I started off in careers that were supporting oppressed groups. So I did a lot of work around teenage pregnancy, and then also domestic violence, and then anti-racism. In my last job, which I absolutely loved, I worked for the NHS. It was an anti-racism project. And we were in that post at the time when the government changed and we first heard about austerity cuts. So we knew that there were going to be big changes within the NHS, and we knew that the NHS was going to be one of the first public services to be hit. So when we were going to all of these meetings, I kind of thought to myself, I don't think this is a project they're going to fund. I can see lots of things changing. And I kind of thought, well, what else can I do? So I started looking at jobs, as you do online, etc. And there was absolutely nothing I could imagine myself doing. I've always been very, very blessed to have always had jobs I've loved. I've loved going into work. I've loved speaking about what I do. I've been happy at work. I've got good colleagues, a lovely workplace. So I've always been incredibly blessed. So when I'm looking at these jobs and I'm thinking, I can't see myself delivering that, or I can't see myself working there, or I'd go for an interview and the colleagues that were there, I just couldn't see myself gelling with that group and stuff. I thought, I can't do this. I can't be one of those people that are in a job that they hate, that they go to every day, and they're depressed, but they have to do it because of a salary. So I started thinking about what other things I could do, and I couldn't think of anything at all. So near the end of when my contract was finishing and I knew they wouldn't be renewing it, my boss at the time asked all of the workforce, all of our small team, what other qualifications we think may help us in our future journey. And I thought to myself, well, this photos thing that I like doing, I wonder if I could do something with that. Like, if someone else is paying for this qualification, I may as well get it. Mm-hmm. So he paid for a qualification in photography. So that was a HND or HNC, something like that, in photography at Sandwell College. And I kind of just started the qualification and thought, you know what, I'm going to see if I can make a go of this photography thing. Mm-hmm. So I finished my course, set up a website, started putting pictures out on Facebook and all those things that people do. And I got my first booking, and it continued from there until 10 years later, I'm still here.
I love the way you just told that, because I really placed myself in 10 years ago. And it's funny because 10 years have gone so quickly, because in 2009, when you initially said 10 years ago, it seemed much longer than when I realized 10 years ago was actually 2009. But that's by the by. How did you go from getting your first client and finishing your course and actually going out and saying I'm in business, to now taking pictures for MTV and some of the other kind of major brands and organizations that you've taken? And did you have a plan? I think that's a really key. Okay. Has it happened organically, or did you start and say, actually, the goal is I want to be taking pictures for these big companies or for these big major events?
Okay. I would say I didn't have a clear-cut plan. I think a lot of my success, I would say, is organic. Well, a mixture between luck, someone looking down on me, and hard work, and it being organic. I think it's all of those things. I've always had kind of goals rather than a plan. Mm-hmm. So I may say to myself next year, oh, I've never shot an event. I've never shot such and such a celebrity. So I've got a list of celebrities I want to say that I've photographed. So I want to be booked for those events. So celebrities I've already photographed, for example, include people like Usain Bolt, Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Usher, who I've got a selfie with, may I say.
Oh, don't get me upset now.
I'm trying to think who else. Harry and Meghan, just lots of very well-known public figures. So I may have a list to say, I want to be able to say I've shot that person, or I've shot such and such a person. And I also always had goals. I'd look at things that I used to watch on the TV and think, oh, wouldn't it be fantastic to be able to be a photographer there? So London Fashion Week, for example, or the Diamond League, for example. So some of these really big events, the BAFTAs, the Fashion Awards, all of these are events I used to watch on television, and I've now been a photographer at. So I always have those goals. I wouldn't say it's a plan as such, but I do have goals to say, I want to be able to say in my career that I've ticked that off, and, I've had that as a job. In terms of how I got there, now, it is so difficult for me to chart the path to how I've got to where I have. Mm-hmm. Like I say, some of it has literally been being at the right place at the right time. So, for example, I did a job with the BBC, who then subsequently booked me for other jobs, and I became a a freelance BBC photographer because one of their photographers didn't turn up at a job and I was there.
Good
So
timing.
exactly. So I shot the job. I then ended up being on the BBC freelance list. So then I shoot for the BBC. So I'd say some people would say that was somebody looking down on me. Other people would call it luck. Who knows? But, you know, I have had some jobs like that. I think for me, it's very unfair to say that I've got to where I have purely through hard work. I think that's just a really false statement when I hear people say that, because I think that some of the hardest working people I know are also some of the poorest people.
Yes.
So if it was just down to hard work, then there'd be a lot of developing countries with some very rich people all the way throughout. So it isn't just down to that, it's down to lots of other things. I'm not saying that my hard work doesn't contribute to it. So, you know, there are times when I'll have very long days and I'll be fine editing all day or shooting all day, or, you know, finding myself something to do because I'm not doing anything on a particular day. So my hard work contributes to it, but it's not everything. Then I've also had some very good colleagues around me. So people that have shared how you get into certain fields or how you shoot certain things, that have shared some of their knowledge that they've gained along their journey. So to name some of these colleagues, Banley Burke shared some of his experiences of documentary photography, and I've worked alongside and assisted Banley as well. People like Colvin Hazard, he'll laugh at this because he says he looks up to me, whereas I look up to him, who is a sports photographer. And I met him on my very first sports job when I was so unsure about, you know, how to shoot sports and my settings and everything. And Colvin kind of helped me through that journey. I'm trying to think of some others, which I can't do at the moment. But yeah, I've had some very blessed colleagues that have been kind enough to kind of share their knowledge. And I know that isn't something that happens in all fields. You know, a lot of people like to keep this information to themselves. So yeah, that has contributed towards some of it. I think I've been quite proactive as well in terms of going out and finding out, how do I get into this field? How do I get into press? How do I, you know, get into all of these fields that may seem a bit aloof to some people? So I think it's a combination of all of those things. It's not just one thing, and it's definitely not just down to my hard work.
No, I love that, and I think you're very much correct that there's a lot of people. Well, not a lot of people. There are some people who really will just say, "Well, I've been grafting and I've been working hard, and that's what happens." Or there's lots of kind of business coaches and business gurus that will say, "Just work hard and it will be fine." And actually, no, because there's other factors that can contribute to you being a success or not. And what you said about the developing countries, I think that's spot on. There's so many people that are really working hard and don't necessarily get that financial recognition for the work that they do. So I love that you explained it like that. So you didn't have a plan, but you had goals, which to me is kind of similar. There was an end vision of what you wanted to do. And you have this, I love that you had a list of who you wanted to work with. I started to do a similar list for this, and you was on it.
Okay.
But no, I love that you created that list, and it's making me feel that if you created your list and you've managed to have a selfie with Usher and take Barack Obama's pictures, then maybe I'm onto the right direction. And I can't move past without saying, how did you feel then, or how have you felt when you started to photograph some of the people that were on the list, especially some of the kind of big names that you would have probably written down and not necessarily expected to have photographed so quickly in your career?
Let me think. Okay, well, if I go back to my first ever London Fashion Week as my first example, so I was absolutely buzzing, gassed, whatever you want to say. I was like, oh my gosh, I am at London Fashion Week. I'm here in the photographer's pit. Like, I was so excited. I soon had a bit of a wake up call when I found out how difficult it is to be a fashion photographer, a new fashion photographer. It's very much of a old boys network. People have been shooting there for many, many years. When you come in as a newcomer, you do not get an easy ride. And one of my colleagues, I call him a colleague now, he wasn't a colleague then, Tony, He'd been a fashion photographer for, I think, about 20 years. And I came in, got my space in the press pit. Basically, all press photographers will have a small area where you have to set up and shoot the models as they come down the catwalk. There'll be different photographers that are shooting for different organisations. So one might be shooting for Marie Claire, one might be shooting for the Sun newspaper, one might be shooting for, I don't know, another newspaper. So there's lots of photographers in this pit. I'd say there's probably about 60 photographers all in a very small area. So you have to go in and you have to mark out a space where you're going to stand or where you're going to sit to shoot the catwalk. And I didn't know the process for marking out spaces, so I just went in, marked out a space what I thought was a space. I didn't know it was somebody's space. Marked out a space and stood in it. And Tony turned around to me and was like, "You can't stand there." And because I've been so used to having to stand my ground with so many photographers being male and me being a female, I kind of stood my ground and I was arguing with him. And I remember like this argument went on for a little while, and in the end I got shuffled to the side a little bit, but more or less in the space that I was. So fast forward now about 4 years, and me and Tony are now friends. And I reminded him of that time, and he said, "Yeah, I did it on purpose." And I was like, "What do you mean you did it on purpose?" He said, I gave you a hard time on purpose. I was like, "Why would you do that? Like, you know, I'm new to this. I was scared. Like, why would you do that?" He said, "I do it with a lot of the new photographers because fashion photography is like a really difficult world, and I wanted to test you to see if you had the guts to come back. So because you have been back, and now, you know, now that you are a fashion photographer as well, you passed the test. But if I'd you know, given you a hard time and you didn't come back, then that would have proven that you just weren't cut out for fashion photography. So I did that to you on purpose."
And I suppose it worked. And in terms of confidence building and you kind of owning your space, I guess it was a valuable lesson that he had a part in teaching you.
It was. So, so that was my experience of Fashion Week. And then there's been other experiences. So, for example, when I had to photograph Usher, I got a call from my agency. "Oh, Usher's coming to such and such. We want someone to cover this job. Are you available?" "Oh, yes, of course I am. I will make myself available for that." So went down to London, which is where the job was, and it was a really small, intimate class, basically. You know, when your school invites someone in to talk about performing arts, and it's usually the guy from the local theatre or somebody. Mm-hmm. This school invited Usher to talk to their students about performing arts. I know. So there were like about 5 photographers, obviously all from different organisations or different newspapers, and I was one of them. And I was standing like right next to him, and I was just like, I've got so many things to say, but I don't know what to say. This is Usher. I used to have Usher as a poster on my bedroom wall, so Usher means a lot to me.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it because I was a huge Usher fan growing up. And to take a picture, my hand would have been. Did you
go to his first concert at I think it was at the Dome or Hippodrome?
Oh, not in Birmingham. I went to the Hammersmith Apollo in London. This is a side note, but this is when the 8701 album came out, and I somehow managed to find myself on the stage and went and had a bit of a dance with him before the security guard pulled me off. But I was very starstruck. I didn't say anything. I was just move, do something. Yeah. So being in a close proximity, taking a picture, there's no way I wouldn't have. I would have been able to do it.
It was. I still. When I pick my camera up straight away, I'll forget about everything else. Yeah, so I was able to do my job and everything. But then as soon as I put my camera down and I'm back in the room, I'm like, I'm standing next to Usher and he's just here having a cup of tea, and then he's having a chat, and then I'm just going to get a selfie with him, and I put my arm around him and all of these things. So even though, you know, it is my job and I can still do it professionally, I was still very, very excited over meeting some of the people, especially people who have been my idols growing up. Yeah. So I am still excited. I go back to that kind of prepubescent girl that had him as a poster on her wall kind of thing.
Oh, I love that.
So I still get excited about my job all the time.
Mm-hmm. And taking it back a little bit, so you finished your job with the NHS, you then did your course, and then you said, right, I'm going to be a photographer. What was the reactions of the people around you? Because I'm sure that was a real kind of surprise to them, going from something quite stable and secure to then doing something that's a little bit more. Absolutely. They probably would have perceived as a little bit more shaky.
Absolutely. Not only the stability of it, but also the kudos of it. When I worked for the NHS, my grandparents, for example, they didn't understand working for the state. They understood working for the state as being a social worker. Okay. So my nan always called me a social worker. I'm like, yeah, okay, nan, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a social worker. Yeah. So when I told my nan that I was leaving that job, which in her eyes was a very good job, to take pictures, okay, her exact words to me were, you left your good job, you got to take a picture. I was like, yes, nan, I'm going to take pictures. And and that's also the sentiment of a lot of people around me when I told them that I'm no longer doing the job I used to do and that I'm now going to be a photographer. You're going to take pictures? Can you make a living from that? Like, can you earn money from that? So everybody had this belief, not even everybody, but a lot of people had this disbelief that I was going to somehow earn money from pressing a button on a camera, which is how people see it. So I ended up just not telling people what I was planning to do, because it would just felt so kind of demoralizing that I'd gone from having a really good, respected senior level job in the NHS to now, as people saw it, taking pictures. So yeah, that was the kind of response from a lot of people around me. And I think for me, I'm one of those people, I hate it when people underestimate me or think I can't do something. I feel even more motivated to make it work. And I think that was probably one of my motivating factors to kind of push myself and to get out there and to make this thing work, that I wanted to show all of these people that, yes, I'm going to take pictures and I'm going to make money from taking pictures. And like I said, God willing, touch wood, I'm still here all these years later.
Yeah, and you've kind of answered the question that I was going to ask, was how did you manage to stay motivated in light of those people's responses? But I guess you used it as the motivation to push forward.
It was some of that, and also, as I said, I've had some really good colleagues around me. Like we've got even now, I have a small network of other photographers that we have our rants and our moans to each other. We'll support each other, whereby, you know, someone's had to cancel something last minute and somebody else will cover it for them. We'll borrow kit from each other. We'll help each other figure out certain things. And I think it's really, really important to have people around you like that, because, you know, some days you can feel like Superwoman, but then other days you feel like just laying in bed and having the covers over your head. And you need somebody during those days to kind of be able to pick you up and get you back on the treadmill again. So I think it's been a combination of those things. I never ever say with any situation it's just one thing. So, you know, good friends around me, good family around me, some of my successes which have then pushed me forward even more, as well as me wanting to show people that, yeah, I was going to make this work.
So on your industry, I've worked with different photographers for different reasons, but I didn't realize that it was such a collaborative and supportive kind of industry. Has there been any incidents or situations where people have not been supportive in the industry? And somebody's like, have you ever been called to go to something and somebody's like elbowed you out the way so they could get the picture?
That happened. That absolutely. I think I wouldn't go as far as to say that it is a collaborative industry. I would just say I've got some good colleagues around me. So I wouldn't say that's industry wide. It's just so happened that those have been managed. I've managed to be able to connect with some of those people. I'd say that as an industry, probably press photography and paparazzi photography are probably the most unfriendly genres that I've worked in. So for example, in pap photography, and I don't do a lot of papping because it's not my thing, although I've tried it. And I like to try things just to see if I do like them or not. It's just not my kind of thing. I don't like the idea of waiting around for hours. I don't like the idea of jumping out of cars at people and all that kind of clandestine things that you have to do sometimes with paparazzi photography. And I remember we were shooting Rihanna, she had just come out of a nightclub. Can't remember who she was with, and there was about maybe 10 paps, all of us standing there outside the nightclub waiting for her to come out. And I remember one pap didn't like the idea that I'd got a better position than he had, because he'd been a pap for much longer, so he believed that he deserved the better position. But I just happened to get there at that time, get into that position. It's my position as far as I'm concerned. So just started giving me a bit of a difficult time, just started, being very verbal towards me, then threatened to break my camera. Then throughout the shoot, a few times I felt a punch in my back. I don't know who it was because we were all in a big scrum, but I presume it was him. And that's happened a few different times with pap photography. So yeah, the paps I find are very, what's the word?
Aggressive, it sounds.
Yeah, aggressive's one word. Aggressive's one word, but very territorial about papping. So yeah, I find paparazzi photography and press photography the most aggressive in that kind of way. Press photography, I'd say not to the point where people have been physical with me, but I've definitely had verbal confrontations with people. It does get better as you go along, as people start to recognise your face and know that you're kind of there to stay. But yeah, for anyone getting into it, I'd say those two areas, in my experience, were the most difficult. So yeah, it's definitely not all collaboration. There are many times when people are working against you, where there's people that, I don't know, wouldn't just shift over a little bit just so you can get into a space, or would purposefully block your view so that you don't get a good image, etc. So yeah, there's both sides of the coin.
And were you born with that kind of inner strength and inner resolve that nobody's going to push me around and I'm going to keep doing this, or is it something you've had to develop through the exchanges that you've had?
I don't know. I really don't know, because I think that's almost like something that somebody else would have to judge, if that makes sense. Because I just see me as this is just the way I am. I don't know if this is strong, weak, in between, normal, not normal. I don't know. This is just the person that I am. Whereas somebody else from the outside may look in and say, "Oh no, you're this and you're that, and I wouldn't have been able to do that, or I would have done it this way." So I don't know.
Well, okay, growing up then, because everyone at school at some point has someone that tries to either bully them or call them names, etc. Oh, you didn't. So maybe you have always been like this then. Maybe that's what it is.
Is that a common experience for a lot of people?
Yeah, not necessarily full-blown bullying, but I feel like every child at some point in their life has someone that will try to overstep the boundaries to see if there's someone that can be teased and can be bullied. And the people that you find that don't experience that are normally the leaders and the ones that just wouldn't ever be fazed by that. And that's why I said, is it something you were born with or grown with? Because some people at school were the bullied one or the set upon one, but then when they go out into their career, they have to get more resilient to deal with what's happening around them. But maybe you just have always been resilient, especially if you don't remember anyone ever bullying you.
Maybe then, because I wasn't bullied at school. I loved school. School was like, I had an amazing, all through my infants, juniors and seniors, I had an amazing school life. So maybe so, if that's a common experience for many people.
No, definitely. I think that based on what you said as well, in terms of dealing with the people that have done stuff to you in business, I would say, yeah, if you haven't run away and cried at these things, then probably you already had that inner resolve. Because I know there's people that, if they were recounting those same situations, probably wouldn't still be in photography now.
Maybe.
That's a pat on the back. You have an inner warrior in you. So
thank you.
Speaking more about kind of your actual running, how you run your business and the kind of behind the scenes stuff. One of the key issues that a lot of the clients that I work with always have is around finance. And I've worked with people that have been in business in an industry kind of similar to yours, where it is about getting bookings and you kind of judged on the work that you produce. And sometimes money doesn't always flow kind of consistently. Has there been points in your career where maybe you weren't getting as many contracts or bookings as you would like, and money may have been peaking and you didn't necessarily know how you were going to pay the rent next month, and how, if that has happened, how did you deal with that?
I always, even now, have peaks and troughs in my income. So that to me has been consistent throughout all of the time. It's never got to the point where I've been worried about how I'm paying the rent or buying food. Again, I think I'm in a very blessed position to own my own home and have bought it at a time when I don't have a huge mortgage. I own my car outright, so I don't have car payments. I try and put myself in a position when I do have a big influx of contracts. I try and put myself in a position whereby, so the council tax gets paid annually, and all these things that will be your monthly. You're starting off with this amount. By the time all the bills come out, it's this amount. So I try and put myself in a position where all of those things are all paid as soon as, so that if I do have any of those months, there are very minimal outgoings. So yeah, there's always been peaks and troughs, but it's still always been okay. Otherwise, I think by now I would have found maybe a part-time job, or just something else to supplement my income. I think one of the things that helps me, and this may not work for all photographers, is the fact that I cover so many different genres. So there literally is so many different things that I can earn my income through. So I still do lecture, I still do one-to-ones, like I said, sports photography, event photography, portraits, weddings, interiors photography. I'm now doing some architecture photography for the local council. So because I have got fingers in so many pies, I think that has worked for me. Like I said, it may not work for everybody else, because there may be other people that prefer to specialise in one thing, and that works better for them. But for me, that has worked. So like I say, my finance has always been up and down, but it's never been a point where I'm scared of losing the house or anything.
Where did you learn that financial management from? Because I don't meet many people that try to pay everything up front. Like, that's quite a unique approach to finances.
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, my dad's very much like that. My dad has the only thing he's ever had on credit is his house. Everything else in his whole life is always paid for up front.
Wow.
So I don't know if I've got that from my dad. It was quite funny actually, because recently, everyone's doing this PPI check thing.
Oh yeah.
And we did one for my dad because obviously he's had houses and cars and all of these things. And literally he's had the same mortgage provider since like the 1960s. He's never changed the mortgage or anything. And that's the only thing he's ever had on credit. So yeah, he didn't have any PPI returns. But I think maybe I get it from my dad. I don't know. But,
well, you probably internalize how he, even if it's not been a formal sit down, I'm going to teach you. If you've heard it and seen it, you probably internalized it and said, that's how I need to do it. But I think that's a great way of doing it.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe it could well be. It could well be. I wouldn't be able to put my finger on what, but yeah, it could well be.
And in terms of your industry as well, as I said, I've dealt with photographers for a variety of different reasons. And one of the things that a lot of photographers have said to me is that people don't always value spending on a photographer. And because of that, it's a lot of negotiation about how much you're charging. And especially in the early days, did you ever struggle with like setting, this is my price and I'm not moving from it? And how did you know what your worth was?
Okay. Yes, in the early days, very much so. Not so much now, because how I work now is the price, and yes, there are other photographers out there that are cheaper and more expensive, and if you're happy with the service and the images that those photographers are providing, then please feel free to book another photographer. That's what the market is there for. So I don't negotiate on my prices now. The price is what it is, and that's kind of it. I think in the earlier days, obviously, it was a little bit more difficult. I still think that people don't value photography very much. I think there's I think that there's lots of reasons for that. For example, there are lots of photographers who are hobbyist photographers who do a lot of things for free, who will shoot an event and give somebody 500 images for free, who will, I don't know, cover a wedding for £200, etc. So in many people's minds, they can just see two photographers that have two cameras. This one's charging X, that one's charging Y. That one must be just overcharging and putting on money kind of thing. And then there are also people that do value photography. I think the market is there for both types of clients. And for me, what I always say to photographers, and not just photographers, any creatives, I compare my industry to chicken and chip shops. So you'll think of a road in your local area, and in most areas there'll be a road that's got about 10 chicken and chip shops on there. So, you know, they're all in business, they're all still going, they're all providing food, they're all providing the exact same service. However, one might be more expensive, one might be cheaper, one might provide spicier chicken, one might provide blander chicken, one might provide eating facilities, one you might just like the owner. And for all those reasons, they all get business. And this is what I say to creatives: no matter what your prices are, no matter what your service is, whether, you know, you're a lower end photographer, a higher end photographer, middle of the road photographer, there is still a market out there for you, but it's for you to kind of set the parameters of what you're willing to accept and not accept. In terms of me setting the prices and knowing how much to charge, we did a really useful exercise at college whereby we had to create a spreadsheet. In this spreadsheet, we put in all of the equipment that we owned, the price of all of the equipment, how often that equipment would need to be replaced. There was a lot of other things that we had to put into this spreadsheet, how much we wanted to earn, and we basically had to work out how much we'd have to earn every day or on a 3-day week or a 4-day week in order to get to that figure, taking into account all of those things, you know, how much you spent on equipment, your wear and tear, your insurance, your travel, etc., etc. So that was a really good exercise in getting kind of like a marker in terms of where I should start with my figures. And then as you go along and you get further into business, for me, what I realised is that there are some jobs that I've done that I haven't priced right because it just wasn't worth my time with all the hours that I had to put in. It's not just the time that you're there shooting, it's the preparation time before, it's all the post-processing afterwards, or you're liaising with the client afterwards, etc. So for those jobs, I then price them differently, and that's been something I've kind of learned as I've gone along, that, you know, this isn't just a hobby, it's something that has to keep me. So it has to be this price for it to work out financially beneficial for me.
Along the journey, what would you say, if there is one, has been the biggest mistake that you've made, or the biggest lesson you've learned based on a mistake that you've made?
That's a difficult one. Biggest mistake, biggest lesson I've learned. I'm really not sure, because the reason I say that is a lot of people, I've done similar types of interviews before, and one of the questions I've been asked is, what would you change if you were to do it again? And it's kind of along the same kind of strands as the question that you're asking now. And one of the things I say to that is, I wouldn't actually change anything, because with everything, there's been learning with everything. So when I have charged a price for a particular commission that wasn't financially viable for me, there's been learning from that. When I have done the type of photography that I don't enjoy, there's been learning from that. When I've had bad experiences with other photographers, there's been learning from that. So I'd say I can't put my finger on one particular huge thing, but I can say lots of little things like that where there's been learning all along my journey. So I wouldn't change any of that, because, like I say, it's all still learning, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely am a believer that you shouldn't ever want to change anything, because every mistake is a lesson for the future. But I think in my entrepreneurial career, there's pivotal things where I can say I didn't do that right. I can't go back and change it, and I wouldn't want to go back and change it because actually it's brought me to this place. But the lesson that was learned is X, Y, and Z. And I think for a few different people that I've spoken to, they can pinpoint, and it's usually two camps. Either they can pinpoint one or two specific things. I did this wrong, and this is the lesson. Or, as you said, the other camp is kind of, I've learned many lessons along the way that have all kind of brought me to this position. But I think valuing your past and valuing maybe what you didn't know at that time is really important. I don't think you should live with regrets because, as you said, everything is a lesson learned that brings you to where you're at now. And speaking of that, 3 pieces of advice that you would give to somebody else who may be wanting to embark on I'd say probably a creative business, or starting a creative business for their entrepreneurial journey. What 3 pieces of advice would you give based on the lessons you've learned over the years?
Okay. I would say, now this contradicts what a lot of people say about having a plan B or a backup plan. I didn't have a backup plan because I knew I wanted to make this particular thing work. And I think if you have a backup plan, sometimes you're already planning to fail. So I know it's not what a lot of people say, but that's my kind of belief on it. So I would say, rather than a backup plan, have a slush fund as your backup. So on the first parts of your journey, that you have got something to fall back on, so that, you know, if you do have a quiet month, you haven't suddenly got to think, okay, I need to go and get a job now. I need to give up on this dream and go and get a job. So have some kind of slush fund, if that's at all possible, when you do start your creative business, so that you have that little bumper, so that when you do have your quiet months, you can still keep plodding on in the early days. I would say go searching, and I don't know, I can't pinpoint how everybody would do this, but go looking for other creators that are in your field who you can get support from. Like I said, in my early days, I did get support and advice from other creatives that were very friendly, that were very collaborative, that were willing to share. And they're some of my friends now. So it's important to have that support network around you, of people that understand what you're going through. I think it's difficult to try and have that conversation with somebody who's not in a creative field and doesn't understand your moans about, I don't know, clients not wanting to pay you because they don't value your business, etc. So try and find that support network that understand what you're going through, so that when you are going through those difficult times, you have got that sounding board, you have got that support, etc. And 3, I would say, like I say, I've said before, this hasn't worked for everybody, but for me, I've always found it more advantageous to have lots of different skills in that area. So rather than just being a wedding photographer on its own, or a fashion photographer on its own, for me, what has worked is covering a lot of different genres, so that I have the availability to go into lots of different areas and pick up lots of different commissions. So for me, that has worked. Another photographer may say that something completely different, but I can only talk about my own experience. So I'd say, just make your portfolio very varied, so that you have that flexibility.
That's fabulous, and I would agree with you on all 3 counts. I don't think I ever had a backup plan. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm going to do. And yeah, being varied and being able to offer a variety of different things, I think definitely can help with making sure that you're able to regularly generate income from a variety of different sources. If people want to find out a little bit more about you and about your business, what platforms are you on? What's your website address? How can they do that?
Okay, so on Instagram, I have two accounts. So my general account, which is Lensi, which is LENSI _photography. Also on Instagram, my weddings account, which is Lensi, LENSI.photography.weddings. My website is www.lensi.co.uk.
Fabulous. And I realise I've been saying Lensi instead of Lensi, so apologies.
Everybody does that. Everybody does that.
I really quite like Lensi, actually.
It's quite funny because when I first was thinking of a name, and I remember my brother at the time saying, "No, people are going to call it Lensi," and I was like, "Of course they won't call it Lensi. It's clearly Lensi." So what he said came to pass.
Yeah, sorry, I apologise. I love it. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your journey. There's so many pieces of like knowledge that I think so many people will benefit from hearing. So thank you so much for that. And thank you guys for watching, for listening. Make sure that you subscribe. I'm going to keep banging on about that. Make sure that you like. And please write a comment. What did you think of this interview? Were there any key points that you're going to take away and implement in your business? And remember, tune in next week at 8 o'clock on Sunday for another female entrepreneur story. And if you're a woman in business and you want to be interviewed, please drop me an email at daniela@she'sthebossinternational.com. And remember, think big, take action, keep pushing. And Denise, thank you again so much.
Thank you for having me on.